night, the city of Lagos went agog as all routes.
Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are CORETV News.
Welcome to CORETV,
a 24-hour news station.
Good afternoon and welcome to Core Digest. I am Martins Dixon. Today we will be looking at the various dates and the controversies surrounding it for the resumption of schools in Nigeria as a result of the outbreak of Ebola that has been generating controversies for and against the dates that the federal government has announced. And I have here in the studio a gentleman who is going to help us out with discussions. He is Olukayode Salako. You're welcome to Core Digest.
Yeah, thank you.
Olukayode is the coordinator of Change Agents of Nigeria Network. He is an activist, an educationist, and a Rotarian. Thank you for obliging to be on Core Digest.
Thank you for having me in your studio. And happy Sunday.
Same to you. Before we go ahead, we're going to look at a video and the statement of the federal government concerning the resumption of schools as a result of the outbreak of Ebola, and then we'll be back to continue discussions.
All right.
Issue of schools. Well, the Minister of Education, after meeting with the Commissioners for Education from the 36 states and also the Secretariat for Education of the Federal Capital Territory, decided when public schools should open, which they've told us will be 22nd of September this year. Of course, in taking that decision, they also used information that was given by the Federal Ministry of Health to the fact that there's absolutely no reason now, with the information we have at hand, the expert information we have at hand, why schools cannot resume earlier than the original date that was supposed to have been 13th of October this year.
That's the federal government side of the two statements. The date initially was shifted to October 13th and then back to September 22nd. There have been agitation, some for and some has stood against these resumption dates for schools. Now, do you think these controversies are necessary or they shouldn't be there, or what's your own point of it?
Well, thank you. The controversies are necessary because we are talking about a disease that has killed thousands of people across the West African sub-region. A disease that is still there in some countries. But the question is, right now, do we still have Ebola in Nigeria? Do we still have any convincing, evidence that Ebola is still in Nigeria? What the federal government is making us understand is that it has been contained. The disease has been contained. And that is why the federal government has put up the argument that it is now safe for schools, to reopen. What they are saying is, that at present, as at now, there is no case of Ebola outbreak in any part of Nigeria anymore, apart from Lagos that experienced it, and River State that also got a wind of it recently. And I think because of the swift reaction of government and all stakeholders in the medical profession, Ebola, according to the federal government, because the only place we can get authentic information, reliable information, is from the federal government. And maybe the Nigerian Medical Association. These are the two bodies that can give us that authentic information that Nigerians must believe. And from the side of the federal government, because every information that is being processed from any part of the country stops on the table of the Minister of Health. You know, that is Professor Onyebuchi. So he is a person who can tell Nigerians what Nigerians must believe. And what he has been saying is that Nigeria is now safe for school children, students, to go back to school. I am an educationist, and my own fear when the issue of when school should resume and when schools should reopen or not came up. My own fear is the best place Ebola can be transmitted, can be transferred, is in the school, no doubt about that. Because of the little children who can hardly, live with that consciousness. Children don't care. Children don't know what is Ebola.
They just play around.
They just play around. They play around, they fellowship, they interact. With plain minds. Children don't keep grudges. They don't, suspect themselves. But from the information that the federal government has gathered and released, it is now convincing, that Ebola has been contained. And one thing about Ebola, let me tell you one good thing about Ebola is this. One can only get it. Ebola can only be transferred from someone that is very, very sick and that has Ebola. It is only someone that has Ebola and that is very, very sick that can transfer Ebola. So this would have given the schools, a clue, a better clue on how Ebola can be contained. That is, I run a school for example, I run a school, and I will always be watching out, looking out for any child that might be sick. So from the gate of my school, the temperature reader has been purchased by my school. So at the gate of the school, I make sure that I do not allow any child that is indisposed for whatever reason to come into the school. And the issue of personal hygiene is going to be definitely be looked into.
Okay, so, before we begin to go into these things,
all right.
Now let's begin to look at this aspect. There are some who are of the opinion that instead of just looking at the issue of containment and then allowing children to go to school, the country should be 100% sure that all cases of Ebola has been eradicated before schools open. There are people that are of that school of thought. Now, do you think that is the best way to go about it?
You see, in spite of the fact that the schools are still closed, a lot of children still go to school. There are some tutorial centers who still operate. There are some lessons who still keep children.
No, but that has been suspended by the federal government.
Some schools, some children still go out in the morning to learn. We are aware of this. There are some local lessons under the house, tutorial centers, remedial houses who still operate. Then come to think of it, do children not go to church? Children still go to church. 4 days ago, I saw about 100 children jam-packed together on a bus. Maybe they were going on an excursion or whatever. And I told my wife, I said, look at, these are children here lapping one another. They were lapping. Some of them were lapping. They were just jam-packed on a bus there going for a church program. So it is not only through the school, the medium, that Ebola can be a risk. Some churches still run their programs like the schools. They still keep children the way schools would normally keep them. Some churches also have playgrounds. Some religious houses, some mosques also have places dedicated for children to learn about their religion, to learn about God. And at the end of the day, you remember that you don't keep children for too long. When you keep children for too long, they start getting bored. So you want to release them to go and play. So most religious houses in Nigeria today still run the kind of programs that the federal government actually wants to check around the school system. So in a nutshell, I am of the opinion that instead of us continue to keep these children at home perpetually, redundant, restless, some of these children are restless at home, and they are imbibing untoward, habits at home. When parents leave home in the morning, they don't know what their children do until they come back in the evenings. So what the government ought to have done is what the government is doing. One, be sure that Ebola has been contained, because Ebola can only be transferred by someone that is very, very sick. So the federal government is convinced that Ebola has been contained. And two, some safety measures, have been put in place. They might not have been put in place completely, but they are being put in place by schools. Every school is now conscious of the fact that, there is an Ebola outbreak in Nigeria, though it has been contained, yet it could still be a threat to the health of the children, to the health of everybody. So everybody is living in that consciousness now, trying to see what they can do to avert an outbreak in their religious, their various schools.
Okay, there is this school of thought that, or people opinion is that, who has said, initially when the outcry came about the resumption of the date and schools should not be kept closed, that is the private school owners that are pushing for schools to still open, irrespective of the fact that the risks and the dangers are still there.
What is the evidence for that? You see,
some people look at it particularly from the angle that the business arm of those schools might suffer because the money comes in when the schools are open and the schools
outbreak
are closed.
of Ebola has had negative effect on the economy of Nigeria generally. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they are complaining. Those who run hotels, hoteliers are complaining. Those who run public event centers are complaining. Those who run pepper soup joints, beer parlor joint and all of that are complaining. And do you know what all these enterprises contribute to the GDP of Nigeria? It's not only the schools that have been affected. Yes, the schools are only going to be affected in the areas of the owners of the schools being able to pay the salaries of their staff, the workers. Because whether it is holiday period or not, we pay. Even if the government says children should stay at home for 6 months, the parents are still coming back to pay the school. The parents are still going to pay for it. So what the private, school system is all about is not about making the money alone. It's about educating the children properly within the stipulated period of time. Everything has a calendar. When you continue to keep children at home perpetually, it will definitely affect the school calendar. It will also affect the promotion of its children. There are some students who want to go abroad to school. It will definitely affect them because other countries are not changing their own calendar. It is only Nigeria that is changing. There are some students who want to come and school in Nigeria who might have been ready in their own countries, and they have to come to Nigeria. So a lot of things are going to be affected. It's not about the money alone. But what we, the private school owners, are saying is that the government has convinced us enough that it is now safe for children to go back to school. So why keeping children at home to be useless when the federal government has said it is convinced? The Lagos State government has said it is convinced that it is now safe for children to go back to school. So that is the area we are looking at it.
No, but is September 22nd too far a date for schools to resume?
September 22nd is okay. It's okay because the federal government, some of these people in government also have children in school. it is not all of them that have their children abroad. Some of them still have their children in Nigeria, school in Nigeria. And let me tell you one thing about Ebola. It is a problem to both the poor and the rich. Because if anyone contracts Ebola today, there is no country that will accept you. There is no country that will allow you to fly into their own country to come and treat Ebola. So, to the rich, it is even of more difficult problem to the rich. Because if it is the normal diseases, normal ailments that, the rich man can be, flown out of the country, we can say, okay, it is because they are rich. That's why they said, okay, children should go back to school. No. If a rich man contracts Ebola today, he has to be contained in Nigeria. He can't be flown out. There is no Switzerland hospital that will, take such a rich man. If President Goodluck Jonathan contracts Ebola today, God forbid, if he contracts it today, he is not going to be flown out. No, there's no country we allow him to come and be treated in their own country. So even the rich also cry more in this issue. If Dr. Adadevo can contract Ebola in Nigeria and die in Nigeria, that is to let you know that it's not even easy for the rich man to fly himself out of the country. So everything about Ebola, both the problem and the solution, has to be about Nigeria, has to be contained here. So the rich people that are saying, the people in government that are saying, let the children go back to school, it does not mean they hate the children of the poor. Many of them also have their children schooling here. Many of them also have their children in some of the higher institutions here, in some of the top private secondary schools here, in some of the top primary schools here. For example, no matter how rich you are, you can't give birth to a child today and send your child today to go and school abroad. At least to an appreciable extent, the children of these rich people still do their primary, nursery and primary education in Nigeria before they are being transferred. So their own children too are among. What I am insisting on, what I am saying is this, that I'm still emphasizing on, is that the federal government is the only institution that can give Nigerians the kind of information we must believe. And what they are saying, what the federal government is saying is that after all consultations, after the analysis of all the information at their beck and call available to assess the problem of Ebola, how so far the government has worked to be able to contain it, the possibility of further outbreaks in the country, everything has been looked into, everything has been reviewed. They now came out to say, okay, October 15 may be too much for the children. It's about the children. I am a father. I know the way my children behave at home now. My children now feel useless at home. They feel useless. Even when you tell a teacher to come and teach them at home, it cannot be as real as these children going back to where their fellowship is. Oh, they want to go and fellowship.
Effective as a classroom.
Yeah, they want to go and fellowship. They want to see their friends. They want to go and enjoy their school activities and all of that. So, Nigerians should trust the federal government of Nigeria, at least for this time, that the outbreak of Ebola in Nigeria has only affected 2 states. And it is only the people that had primary and secondary contact with those that had contact with the late Patrick Sawyer. All of them have been invited, quarantined, tested, and the government is now saying, okay, there is no more case of Ebola again in Nigeria that has been contained. So it is safe for children to go back to school. So we should learn to trust our own government. Okay. So that is what the Minister of Health has been saying.
Okay, at this point now, when if the schools are going to resume on the 22nd,
yeah,
and if nothing happens before that date,
okay.
Now 22nd September, the schools will be opened.
Yes.
Now, how is the the system of the hygiene within the schools to ensure that these children are safe and there is no aggravation of any particular kind of outbreak, especially with Ebola. We know that there has been some kind of nonchalance in the past. But how is the schools going to help to be able to maintain a very high standard of hygiene for these children?
Yes, the various health ministries in all the 36 states of Nigeria, including the FCT, have been collaborating with the private school owners and also the public school principals too. You know, they've been talking to them on how further possible outbreak could be
Avoided.
Could be avoided. Thank you. So, and then the best way to do that are just three reasons, 3 ways. Number one, don't admit a sick child into the school. Don't let the sick child enter the school, except there is a doctor's report that child is suffering from an ailment that is not Ebola. Like in my own school now, I will not allow any sick child to even have access to the gate of the school, let alone sit down in the class. That's number one. Then number two, let every school install running water by the side of the school gate, so that when the children are coming in, they can easily wash their hands. Because Ebola is a virus that goes into the human system through all the openings in the human body. It can go into your ear, the eyes, the mouth, even the anus. So all through all the openings. But if you can wash your hand before you put your hand in the mouth, before you use it to eat anything, then it can help. But the fact of the matter, the main factor here is that Ebola can only be contracted through someone that is very, very sick. And so far you don't touch someone that is sick, so far you don't admit someone that is sick into your school premises, to the extent that the children will not go and touch that pupil or student. So far that does not happen. So far there is a running water, there is an arrangement where the children can wash their hands with clean soaps.
Now how
and
many...
proper monitoring also. The teachers have to be, in surveillance. They have to be able to survey the school premises to see that, okay, all is well with the children within the period they're going to be in school.
Now, you know that most of the schools don't have this, that you call it, the running water or a running tap. Now, some schools don't.
You are very right. Especially the government schools.
Now, public schools.
Public schools,
now,
government schools.
Now, how will this be taken into control? And then also, even if these running taps are there, the dedication and the commitment to ensure that every child washes his hand before he comes into the school premises, how will that be ensured?
Now, let me say this. You see, when a disease is going to break out, it is going to break out. Even in the Asian countries, we have what we call avian flu. It broke out there. Diseases break out in America. There's what we call this swine flu or something. It's a kind of fever too. So diseases will break out when it will break out. But the most important thing is the ability of the health authorities to be able to nip it in the bud or contain it and make sure that it does not spread beyond repair. That is what the federal government of Nigeria, the various health authorities in Nigeria have done with the Ebola outbreak.
Okay, but are the schools ensuring that now, since they're insisting on resumption? Are they ensuring that these things are in place? These things are in place?
Yeah, those of us in the private sector, private education sector, we are very, very conscious of that. We are conscious of that, and we're putting everything in place to make sure that these children come back to school and they are safe within our school premises. But Our problem is with the government schools. Some of these government schools don't have some of these facilities. And I'm aware that the government has been putting them in place. Let us see what happens. And let me also tell you something, please, about Ebola. Ebola has gestation and incubation period. If anybody contracts Ebola, that person has about 21 days. Ebola can only stay in a human body for between 21 days and 25 days before it can become a full-blown sickness. It can manifest full-blown. Now, since some of these people that had contact with both the primary and secondary contact to Mr. Sawyer have been quarantined, some have been treated, and all of that. I think if there is still any more case of Ebola, by now, it is far, far more than 21 days, more than 25 days now, for us to have known who else is going to manifest this. So, around this time now, nobody else is manifesting that. And the only problem we can have in Nigeria is if we allow another Mr. Sawyer to come in, maybe through our borders, the nation's borders, maybe through the airport, seaport, or the land borders. If we make that mistake of allowing more people to come in through the borders, maybe that is where the problem can be. But we cannot say because okay, there is Ebola in Liberia, there is Ebola in Sierra Leone, there is Ebola in Guinea, in Mali, and we now continue to keep our children at home perpetually, so that they won't go to school again.
Yeah,
they still have to go to school.
We've gone beyond that that they are coming to school.
Yeah.
But the issue now is the system around the schools to keep them safe. Because, mind you, even if we don't have an imported case, I know for sure that the control over people who eat some of these meats cannot be 100%. So people can still eat some of these animals that you say shouldn't be eaten.
Yeah.
Some people even eat them without knowing that these are those animals. They just eat meat for eating sake.
Of course.
And then someone might just kill a monkey, a chimpanzee or so, and bring it. You don't know whether that same animal has that disease. So that is where we said it's not 100%. That risk is still there. Peradventure, which we are not praying for, it happens. Now, how will the health system within the school, when these children go back to school, be able to control it? Because we looked at a scenario to see where it will be more devastating if we have an outbreak in the school. And then the society, will be...
As I said earlier, I said the best place Ebola virus can be transferred.
Or let's call it the worst place.
Let me just, when I say the best place, you can't say the worst place. The best place it can be spread is among these children in the schools. It's in the schools. Or let me say religious houses too, included religious houses, through some of these political rallies that we continue to have across, around the country. But it is very easy for Ebola to be contained around adults than children. We know that. What we are relying on as private school owners is the information the Federal Ministry of Health has been dishing out. We are holding on to that information, and that information is that, as of today,
it is safe
for schools to reopen. All we cannot continue to do is to continue to live in the consciousness. Everybody must be in the consciousness, and we must continue to put all those safety measures in place. And I also trust that the government, we constitute a kind of monitoring, authority, like maybe the school inspectors and all of that, for them to continue to go around to make sure that schools, especially approved schools.
Okay, now...
I am speaking for approved schools.
Okay, now we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll begin to look at the hygiene within schools and then some of the solutions that you are trying to profile to keep children healthy and safe in schools.
Okay, thank you.
Viewers, it's been Core Digest. We've been looking at the outbreak of Ebola and the controversial statements that has been coming as a result of school resumption days. We'll take a break, and we'll be back to continue. Stay with us.
The deadly Ebola virus is again spreading in West Africa. The virus has fatality rates of up to 90%, meaning many who contract the disease die. A subcontinent have witnessed over 900 deaths. Please help prevent the spread of Ebola by observing the following precautions. This is a social responsibility awareness campaign of CORETV News.
You can now watch CORETV News live from anywhere in the world on our website www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to CORETV Primetime News.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. And Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click CORETV, leave a space, then news. CORETV News, a 24-hour news station.
Welcome back. This is Core Digest. We've been looking at the outbreak of Ebola and the controversy around schools resumption. I've been talking with Olukayode Salako, and he's been helping us out with discussions. He is the coordinator, Change Agents of Nigeria Network, an educationist, activist, and a Rotarian, as he calls himself. Okay, we've talked so much about the schools and then the government coming to assure people that the disease has been contained. And then we are going to look at the schools, like I said. But before we begin to look at the schools, let's look at the situation now on ground. The government, the Minister for Health has said Ebola has been contained and they think schools are safe to accommodate children. Yeah. But the Nigerian Union of Teachers is saying it's going to go on strike over that resumption date. Now, why is the Union of Teachers threatening to go on strike? Because you should be part of that union too.
Well, we should be part of that union, and we are part of it. But, you see, if we must continue to say, because of Ebola, because Ebola must be contained, until it is contained, until there's no more case of Ebola in Nigeria, if we must continue to stay on that, then our children would continue to stay at home.
Now, why is the Union of Teachers saying it's going to go on strike on that?
I'm coming.
What is their reason?
You see, their own reason is the reason they have adduced is this. They are not sure that the federal government has put in place all the safety measures the federal government is promising. The federal government has promised to assist the schools, to sensitize the schools, to carry the school along, to make sure that all the safety measures, the proper hygiene measures are put in place. What the NUT is saying is that they want the government to be more involved than just mere saying it.
How? What kind of involvement?
So the involvement is maybe assisting some of the, especially the public schools, you see, the private schools can take care of themselves. We operate on our own. But their own concern is that the state, the condition of some of the public schools are not good enough to assure anybody that the children in those schools, you know, are going to be safe, might be safe. So that's what I'm saying. They just want the government to be more committed. They are charging the government to be more committed. And the same government has kept on saying, the government has responded to the demand, to the concern of the Nigerian Union of Teachers.
Now, what specific areas is the bone of contention? What practical involvement?
The NUT is saying some schools don't even have water, don't even have running waters. They don't have running water. So they are charging the federal government, the state government, the local government to look into that first before schools can be open. And what the government is saying is this: we cannot say because some schools don't have some of these things, and will now continue to close the school perpetually. What we are saying is that Ebola has been contained, and that directive has been given for both private, secondary school owners, runners, the local government authorities, the state government authorities, the local education authorities, to go and put those things in place. President Goodluck Jonathan would not have to visit every school. The Minister of Health would not have to visit every school before Nigerians or the NUT can be convinced, satisfied that some of these things have been put in place. What the government will do is what the government has done. Releasing directives, 200 million has been given to Lagos State to help to fight Ebola. And these are the efforts that the federal government are going to do. The Minister of Health is not going to go to every school. The directive has been given, the awareness is on, the sensitization is on. There is nobody in Nigeria today who will say he has not heard about the outbreak of Ebola. There's nobody. The media has been helping. The media has done so much to sensitize the people to create awareness. So what we are saying is that from the information that is available to the government, from the information that the government has, the government, both at the federal and the state levels, are convinced that Ebola has been contained. And some of those measures, if they have not been put in place 100%, they are going to be put in place to make sure that Ebola outbreak does not spread through the schools. So
what are you advising that the NUT does?
I am advising...
What position should the NUT take?
The position is this: the NUT should collaborate more with the government, federal government. The NUT is fighting a common cause. What they are fighting for is for the general well-being of all Nigerians, especially the children who are the vulnerables, the kids. They don't know how to keep some of these things. They are ignorant of some of these measures. But the government is saying, from the information at our disposal, Ebola has been contained, and we are going to put measures, charge school owners, school runners, education authorities, to make sure that some of these preventive, you see, what the federal government is sending the school to put in place are just preventive measures. They are not actually the measures that will contain Ebola. They are just measures that will prevent it. And I've just told you that there are 3 ways Ebola can be prevented. Don't allow a sick child to come into the school premises without the doctor's report confirming that it's not Ebola that child has.
So what if the child falls sick while in school?
If the child falls sick while in school, well, if the child falls sick while in school, the school authority is going to be notified. Even before Ebola, we all fall sick. I just treated malaria for about 3 weeks. So even before Ebola, people can fall sick. It's not only Ebola that is the disease that is ravaging the world. There are more than 1 million diseases that are around. But the fact of the matter is, we cannot say because there is an Ebola outbreak in Nigeria that the federal government has moved swiftly to contain, and we now say our children should continue to sit at home. That is the point. The point is that no matter how much we tell the children to continue to stay at home, if Ebola is going to come to Nigeria, it's going to come to Nigeria. After all, Ebola came in through the international airport, Lagos. Ebola did not come to Nigeria through a school. Ebola can come into the country through so many channels.
Yeah, but it can get to the school after all. So.
Yeah, it can also get to church. It can get to the church, my brother.
Yeah, of course.
It can get to the mosque. Some of these political rallies, it can get there. It can be anywhere. People still converge to run programs, religious programs, socio-economic programs, social events. People still go to parties every weekend in Nigeria.
Yeah,
so
but like
Ebola can come in through any channel.
But like you said earlier, the adults have that consciousness that the children do
Children
not
still go
have.
to birthday parties, my brother. Children also go to birthday parties. There are a lot of birthday parties that are going on in Nigeria, except the federal government wants to stop that. There is no way we can stop this fellowship, this interaction. Human interaction is very, very important, very necessary.
Okay, let me
we can stop it.
Let me take you on this. The doctors have also rejected the school resumption date,
yes,
in line with the NUT. So what do you make out of it? Now, if the NUT is saying they're going to strike if school resumes September 22nd, and then the doctors are also rejecting that date, don't you think it's something that should be looked at?
Well, everything I am saying on this program is from my own personal view, personal opinion. It does not represent the opinion of generality of Nigerians.
Yeah, your opinion as an
it's my own
educationist, and what you think
opinion
should be done.
as an educationist. As an educationist, I have told you what I know about Ebola, what I believe to be done, and
No, but what we're saying here
if the NMA is saying the federal government should have waited until the last Ebola case is treated in Nigeria, they are very right. They are only acting within their professional purview. They are acting professionally. That is the way professionals act. The teachers too are acting professionally. But don't forget that the NMA and the NUT are employees of the federal government of Nigeria. The decision of the federal government, what the federal government knows and should know, can supersede that of the NMA and the NUT. The NMA is only coming out with a professional advice. It's a professional advice that, oh, federal government, you should have waited till the last Ebola case is treated and confirmed in Nigeria before you ask the children to go back to school. That's a professional advice. The doctor can advise you as a patient. It is not left to you to take it. Sometimes the doctor can say, okay, Mr. Salako, you have to stay at home, you have to rest for about 3 hours for so period before you start working, before you go back to your work. But if Mr. Salako gets home and feels the need, the importance, if he feels the reason to go out within that period of professional advice, he can go out and come back and still be okay. So what the NMA has done is a professional advice, which is very, very germane, very, very true, very good. The NUT too, very good. But the reality on ground is what I am speaking for. I'm not talking because I run the school.
Now, the position of the NUT doesn't seem like an advice, because what they're threatening is to go on strike if school resumes.
It is still an advice, but it's not the final say. The federal government has the final say.
To threaten to go on strike is an advice?
The federal government still has the final say.
Yeah, but to threaten to go on strike, it doesn't seem like an advice.
Well, it might not be an advice to them, but to the federal government, it's advisory. Yeah, because the position of the NUT under normal circumstances is supposed to be the position of the federal government. The federal government, the NMA, the NUT ought to have reached a consensus, an agreement, before the federal government can come out with that information that the country is not safe for children to go back to school. So which means there's something wrong somewhere. Because if the NUT is speaking from one side on one direction, the NMA is speaking on one direction, the federal government is speaking or one direction, which means where is the collaborating effort that they are making us to believe? Private school owners are only banking, we are only believing, trusting on the information of the federal government. We are holding on to the information of the federal government that the country is not safe for children to go back to school. And who would come to think of it, my brother? Who would like his business place to continue to be under key and lock? Who would like it? Nobody would like it. The school proprietors are losing. The teachers are going to be losing. They're going to be redundant. The students are going to be redundant. These are some of the things the federal government put into consideration before they said, okay, instead of October 15, let us bring it back to September 22. And they must have studied the incubation period, gestation period of Ebola. Because Ebola has an incubation and gestation period. So I'm sure the federal government must have studied it and feel that, oh, the country is now safe.
Okay,
I will advise the NMA and NUT
let's listen
to go
to
back
this
to the federal
caller.
government.
Let's listen to this caller and then we'll get back to you. James is calling us from Ikorodu. Hello, James.
Yeah, afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, I want to contribute to the program.
Yeah, go ahead with your contribution.
Concerning the Ebola stuff, your guest at the studio, I believe he owns a private school. That's why he's saying like that. Very difficult to control children in school. So my own personal opinion is that the federal government should keep the date of the resumption, yes, so that everything is clear on air before the school resumes. Thank you very much.
Now, what reasons, before you go, James, what reasons do you have that the school should be closed, should remain closed for now?
I think I will tell you.
Why do you think the schools should remain closed? Hello, why do you think the schools should remain closed?
So that at least let's just get rid of the Ebola thing first before the school resumes.
All right, thank you.
October, that will be okay.
Okay, thank you for calling, James.
But the government has said the country is safe.
No,
that's our government.
James is saying you are talking like this because you are from the private school. It's more difficult to control children in the public school than in the private school. So he thinks it should remain closed until the whole thing is dealt with.
I also agree with James. I agree with him 100%. I have said it that everything I'm saying on this program is coming from my own personal opinion. Already as a school owner, already I am bored. You know what I'm saying? I wake up in the morning, nothing to do, and all of that. So there is nobody that would like his business place to be locked, put under key and locked permanently, perpetually. But what I am relying on as a Nigerian, as an individual, is what the federal government of Nigeria says.
Okay,
the federal government says it is now safe for schools to reopen. If the federal government comes out tomorrow morning...
Okay, like James said, he said, okay, the federal government says it is safe.
Yeah.
But he is of the opinion that the school should remain closed until the last
that
case is dealt.
That is his own opinion too.
The last case is dealt.
That is his own opinion too. the federal government has a final say. It's like when God Almighty opens his mouth and says, the whole world is safe. And some people now feel God has not given them enough reason to say the whole world is safe. That is the way the federal government is. The almighty federal government. That is the almighty government in Nigeria. The Federal Ministry of Health has come out to say it is now safe for schools to reopen. That's what we believe in.
Let's listen to Modupe from Ijaye. Modupe, are you there?
Hello?
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for calling.
Good afternoon. Yes. I'm not in support.
Hello, are you still there?
I'm not in support.
Okay, so what's your opinion?
If you get to see them, they do go to church, they do go to market area, You go to a the market, see children wandering about on the main road in the market. You go there and see what is going on. Go to the streets, you see children wandering about. It's Ebola. Please, we are begging the federal government to please allow the children to resume on the 22nd. God bless you.
All right, Motukwe, thank you for that opinion.
What
You had her position.
When the federal government says it is safe, it is safe. If they come out tomorrow morning to say, okay, oh,
so, but I think
we have realized that it's not safe enough.
Let's look at this. Let's look at this. I think the federal government is trying to take a position where it will properly control where it has jurisdiction to control very well. Okay. Like the schools, you know. Okay, we have control in the school, so let's make sure there is no spread from the school, so that it wouldn't say the federal government did not take a very good stand. That is why it was spread through the schools. And I think that probably that is why the federal government is taking that position. But Motukwe is saying here that she sees children around in the market, roaming. She sees children on the streets playing. And why should it be schools that should be closed?
That's my own concern too, my brother. Some of these children are bored. They are bored. They are redundant. They are homesick. We have children at home. Some of them are misbehaving already. They are misbehaving. They do certain things and you wonder why this child is behaving like this. They are bored. The problem is, the fact is, Ebola did not come into Nigeria through the schools. It came into Nigeria through the international airports. Let our international airports be secured, our border areas. Let all the quarantine officers, the health officers, let them man those places. The federal government says it has contained it. So what I am saying is that I believe what the federal government said, that has been contained, that it is not safe for schools to reopen. If tomorrow the federal government says it is no longer safe for school to reopen, who am I to change it? I can't change it. And I'm not even the one who, who prevailed on or who influenced the decision, the federal government, to bring it back to September 22.
Okay,
I wasn't part of it.
Let's look at this now.
There must have been some reasons.
What will be your advice to NUT?
My advice to NUT is to work and listen better to what the federal government is doing. The federal government, on its own part, must also be able to convince the NUT, because the NUT is like the umbrella body. Supervising all the activities of teachers, their welfare, everything in Nigeria. And the students too. And many of these teachers are parents too. I'm sure they don't also want their children to continue to stay at home. But at the same time, nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to lose his child. So we are talking about the health of these children. But the federal government wouldn't have just come out
we'll come back
to say that it is safe without the NUTs being involved.
We'll come back to that. Let's listen to Ibrahim. Ibrahim is calling from Port Harcourt.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you. Thank you for calling into Core Digest. Hello, you can go ahead.
I want to thank the person that spoke for my life. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You're quite stable. Go ahead.
As Ebola is a communicable disease. Ebola is a communicable disease. And if the federal government tells us to resume, I can't say the result of it. They should keep on sensitizing the teachers and those that are needed for a length period of time before the school resumes. That is what they should focus now. Not just to be saying that the school should resume on 22 of this month. I can't borrow that idea. That's my contribution.
All right, Ibrahim. Thanks for making known your opinion there. Now, this is his position.
Yeah.
there should be continuity. He's not sufficing to the 22nd resumption date, but there should be a continual sensitization of everyone and until it is completely eradicated.
That is already going on across Nigeria today. You see musicians, you see artists.
Okay, let's take it beyond beyond this point. Let me borrow a clip from what Ibrahim called in to say.
Okay.
Now, what exactly you think should be put in place in schools? Now, even after this, now, Ebola might not just be the disease. The health, the sanitary condition of these schools should also be a concern. Now, this should be like a wake-up call to all and sundry concerning how the school's health system, the sanitary condition, and the hygiene should be maintained. What do you think should be done?
Well, even before the outbreak of Ebola, there are some standard facilities that a school must have. One of them is a sick bay. A standard sick bay, and if it is a standard national primary school, there should be a standard sick bay with a certified nurse who can always attend to the children's health issues, you know. But there are so many schools who don't have that. And unfortunately, they still have approval, government approval. So that is where I'm going to be calling on the government to look into the regulatory system, our regulatory system. There are a lot of schools that are not supposed to be called schools, that are running as schools and they have government approval. So for as long as we continue to have mushroom schools, parading government approvals, we are going to be facing this type of, there's no way we won't be facing this kind of problems. Because before a school can be given an approval, there are standard facilities, itemized facilities that school is supposed to have. One of them is a standard sick bay. But unfortunately, most schools don't have it. So any school that does not have that should be able to have that around this time now because of the Ebola issue.
And can those schools that do not meet the health standards be kept close, and those that meet standards? Is that a way of sorting out?
That is the way it's supposed to be.
The fear.
That is the way it is supposed to be. You see, unfortunately for Nigeria, we run a compromised system. Our system compromises. We don't run a system that stands on the point and says this is the way it's supposed to be, and that is the way it must be before you can be certified. Look at what happened between. In the issue, I'm sorry for coming into sport. The issue of Giwa and Megeri, where FIFA stood the ground. FIFA is being controlled by white people. White people hardly compromise. Their yes is yes, their no is no. They told Giwa to step down. They don't know him. They said they didn't know him. Let you go. That the person, the owner of the office, should be restored. No. So if the Nigerian system, if our government agencies can also begin to live up to that, then we cannot begin to have schools that are properly certified to run.
To Bosse. Let's give Bosse an opportunity to make a contribution. Bosse, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for calling.
So I want to thank Mr. Olukayode Salako for the contribution for us.
Thank you.
Not fair for them to leave our children at home, please. They are begging. For the moment, they can give us good results that there is no more Ebola in Lagos State or in the country. Allow our children to go to school. For why they are miserable at home already. And it's abuse. Some of them are dull. Now you're asking them to stay at home more. What are we going to gain? We can't cover the school syllabus. Please. Yes, please. I'm a parent too. Have my children at home. Please. Please. People make sure they should go around the schools and check that they have awareness and all the necessary for us to take care of these children, the sanitizers, everything are available in the school. Please, that's my advice.
All right, Bosse.
A lot of parents want their children to go back to school.
Now, let's take a look at this. Now, you were talking initially about the standards that are supposed to be there in schools, and those standards are not there.
The first important one is the sick bay.
Apart from the sick bay,
running water.
What other facilities?
A school must have a clean, or let me say portable running water that the children can play around. When they go to the toilet, the children should be able to clean themselves up with clean water. And from the measures the government is trying to put in place now, every school should have a portable running water at the entrance of the schools. At the entrance of the school. So that as the children are coming into the school premises, they wash their hands. That is, they wash off whatever they might be coming with from their homes before they enter the school premises. So that certifies the hands of the children clean, at least, that they didn't come with the hands they left on with into the school premises. And by the time they are going out, if there are schools that can provide hand sanitizers, for example, in my own school, we are working on giving every student in our school a sanitizer. If a school can do that, let them have a small one in their bag.
Now, are they buying it or is it going to be free?
Schools can sell, schools can give, it depends. It depends on the policy of every school. But in my own school, I am planning, hoping that I can be able to give each child one hand sanitizer. And by the time they finish using that, then their parents can do well. At least it is part of their awareness. If a child comes to school today and goes home with a sanitizer, there is no way the mother will not want to use out of it. The father will not want to use out of it. They will ask him, what is this for? He will educate them. So we are spreading the education. So a sanitizer will be good if a school can provide it. But if a school cannot provide it, a running water with antibacterial soap at the entrance of the school will do well. At least to make sure that the children are coming into their various schools, their school premises, with clean hands. That is that. And the most important aspect, the most important factor that every school owner or anybody manning the school gates from the security post must be conscious of is the fact that you don't allow a child that is sick to come into the school premises. And when a child develops any sickness within the school premises, the school authority should act swiftly by taking that child to the sick bay before proper certification can be carried out. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Then, another point is this. Ebola is not the only disease that we have in this country. If we continue to make people believe that every sickness is Ebola, then we will continue to lose people.
No, of course, because no one is saying every sickness is Ebola.
But to the literate people, they now see every sickness as Ebola. I lost my dad recently through, asthmatic ailment symptoms. When he had the attack, instead of people to come to his aid, to assist him to get to the hospital, everybody was running. People were saying it is only the doctor that could touch him. And in the process, he died. Now, we shouldn't make Nigerians believe that every disease is Ebola. Ebola can only be contracted through someone that has Ebola. And the federal government has told us that as of today, the 14th of September, there is no new case of Ebola recorded from any part of the country. That the only case we have right now are those that have been quarantined, and almost all of them have been released. They've been certified that they didn't have Ebola, and they've been released. So if we don't continue to say because of Ebola, we want to ground our economy. Hoteliers, people who run hotels are complaining, they are crying of poor and low patronage. Those who run pepper soup joints, event centers, are complaining. People who survive through, public events are complaining, and it is directly or indirectly affecting the economy of Nigeria. What we must continue to tell the government, encourage the government to do, is not to rest on their oars, because we are fond of doing that in Nigeria. Once we say, oh, there's no more case of Ebola, everybody relaxes at the airport. Everybody relaxes at the seaport. Everybody relaxes at some of the border areas, some of the places where people come in. Everybody relaxes. So what we must continue to tell the federal government is, whether there is Ebola or no Ebola, for as long as there is still Ebola in Liberia, there is still Ebola in some West African countries, then our federal government must not rest. They must continue to keep vigil on the containment of Ebola. But we cannot say because of Ebola, our children should continue to be a nuisance at home. All we can continue to bank on is what our government says. The federal government has come out, it is an official statement. The federal government has come out to say, from all the information available all over Nigeria, they are convinced that Ebola has been contained, and other efforts are being put in place to make sure that someone like Mr. Sawyer does not bring it into Nigeria again. And finally, Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola has said it, that Ebola is not outright death sentence. That you have Ebola, you know you have Ebola does not mean you are going to die of it.
No, of course, people are being treated.
People have been treated. Nigeria has been able to treat Ebola patients successfully, but at the same time, I believe in prevention is better than cure.
Okay, let's
so
listen
what
to
everybody
Paul.
is saying is about prevention.
Okay, let's listen to Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
I want to contribute to the program. I want to say that I was interested in listening to the coordinator until I heard him say that school, you cannot hold your business under a lock and key program. So I become disappointed in him, because while he was talking, I feel that he was talking to the interest of the masses and the situation at hand. And when he made mention of one cannot hold his business at key, I thought that man believed that the perpetrators are eager for the resumption for their selfish interest or something. Because if the federal government says that the Ebola case has been contempted, I want to believe that they must have get the news from somebody who are the doctors. And the doctors are saying to them that the Ebola case is yet to be contacted. I still don't know why the federal government should just decide to say that the Ebola case has been contested. Because the doctors who are the professionals who are right there looking for the case to handle it are saying it's not yet over. And the federal government says it's over. So I become worried, especially with the statement the coordinator states, say that you cannot hold your business and then maybe under the lock and key or something. So I feel that it is better to listen to the doctors who are right in the interview to tell the federal government the right thing to be done. Most of the public schools right now, if you go around, if it takes time to go around and see what is happening among the public schools, you will really surprised. If the federal government has said that they are asked to work and to make sure that the Ebola case is verified, I believe that most of the primary schools, especially, they are suffering so much, and a huge amount of money we told, and the news carried out that they were released on to take care of this. So the primary school teachers and the UNT that are calling on the federal government to actualize their promises, not just for saying it verbally and then saying it openly. For the part of the private school, yes, because they hold their school, they manage it in their own way, it's accepted. They go on to the public private school, you discover that a lot of mess is there. So I feel that the doctors and the NUT should be listening to. Thank you.
All right, Paul, thank you for that contribution and then making your points there.
Yes.
Okay, you said the doctors are the ones at the forefront, and they should be listened to if they say the Ebola case is not yet over.
I've told you
and
that
the teachers
there is
too
something wrong
should be
somewhere.
listened to.
Because the federal government can come out to tell the whole world to make an official statement about a particular issue that affects even the NMA, that concerns the NMA, that concerns the NUT. There should have been a kind of collaborative meeting where there would have been an agreement on what to tell the public. what I have been saying here, let me first of all correct an accusation of Paul.
Is it an accusation?
I said I am not happy that my business is under key and lock. I have not said that on this program. What I have said is there is nobody who would be happy that his business is under key and lock. They are two different things.
For a very long time.
For a very long time. There's nobody who can be happy. There was a time the Lagos State government...
He was of the opinion that you should have taken the position of the doctors and the NUT, since they say it's not yet over and the federal government should revisit.
My brother, I've just told you that I run a school. And you shouldn't expect me to be on a position, stand on a position where my business can continue to be suffering perpetually.
No, but is it not when the children are safe?
Now, let me tell you something, please. The federal government has said the children are going to be safe. That is what we are holding on to. And has anybody in any part of Nigeria seen the private school owners, private school proprietors carrying a placard and protesting against the closure of the schools? No, we have not done that. We have only made a statement. But we have not said if the government says schools must continue to be closed and we are going to protest or go on strike about it. There is nobody who will be happy that his business is under key and under lock and key. Nobody. But if the government says schools must continue to be closed for the next 6 months, what can we do? That's our government. If the government says, okay, October 15 is what we feel will be safe for the children to go back to school, and the next day they come back to say, okay, after all the researches, after all the effort we have made, after all the information we have been able to gather and analyzed, it is now safe for school to reopen on September 22. Who are we to still say no? When it is all about our means of survival. But there's no school owner that want to say, okay, I want to keep my school open so that Ebola can continue to spread through my school. No. The federal government is what we are looking up to. And what the federal government says is that schools are going to open on the 22, on September 22, and so measures must be put in place. I think that is fair enough. But if the federal government now comes out tomorrow to say, okay, reopening date has been pushed forward again, who are we to stop it? It is all for the general safety of all of us. So we are okay with that. But what the federal government has said is what we are holding on to. That it is now safe for the children to go back to school. And I believe so. I believe in the federal government.
All right. I think we will have to round up here because our time is up and we don't have the luxury of time to continue these discussions. I want to thank you for
very exciting moment.
Thank you for coming on to Core Digest. We hope next time we call on you, you oblige us with the opportunity to be here. Thank you very
much.
Viewers, it's been Core Digest and we've been discussing Ebola, the controversial schools resumption date. And I had been talking with Olukayode Salako. Actually, he is an educationist, an activist, and a Rotarian, the coordinator, Change Agents of Nigeria Network. Thank you for being on Core Digest. Good to have you. Hope tomorrow you keep a date with us on another topic of discussion on Core Digest. I am Martin Dixon. Do have a blissful day.
The deadly Ebola virus is again spreading in West Africa. The virus has fatality rates of up to 90%, meaning many who contract the disease die. A subcontinent have witnessed over 900 deaths. Please help prevent the spread of Ebola by observing the following precautions. This is a social responsibility awareness campaign of CORETV News.